Quantum physics shows us that consciousness collapses wave functions into material reality. Ancient alchemists described the same process thousands of years ago through detailed operations for transforming consciousness. Yet here's the paradox. Most attempts to consciously create what we want simply fail. The reason isn't what you might think. It's not that the principles don't work. Both quantum mechanics and mystery schools have demonstrated that consciousness literally shapes reality. The problem is that the very consciousness trying to create change is often sabotaging itself. Think about it this way. You desperately want a new job, a relationship, financial abundance. But that desperation, that wanting energy, creates what alchemists called resistance. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. The hole is the unconscious patterns working against your conscious desires. Carl Jung spent decades studying this phenomenon. He called it individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole by integrating unconscious content with conscious awareness. Without this integration, you're essentially fighting yourself while trying to manifest your desires. Subscribe as we investigate why your consciousness might be your biggest obstacle to creating the reality you want, and how ancient wisdom provides a roadmap for resolving this fundamental conflict. Let me explain what's actually happening when manifestation fails. Your conscious mind sets an intention, let's say financial prosperity. But buried in your unconscious are beliefs, fears, and emotional patterns that contradict this desire. Maybe guilt about having money while others struggle, fear that success will isolate you from loved ones, resentment toward wealthy people that makes you reject wealth unconsciously. Jung discovered that the psyche contains what he called shadow material. This shadow actively resists conscious intentions that conflict with its programming. Alchemists understood this thousands of years ago. They called it solve, coagula, dissolve, and coagulate. Before you can create something new, you must dissolve what's blocking its creation. They developed specific operations to identify and transform these unconscious obstacles. Modern depth psychology confirms this. Unresolved trauma, limiting beliefs, emotional wounds, these create energetic interference patterns. It's like trying to broadcast clearly while standing next to a radio transmitter, broadcasting conflicting messages. The key insight here is that consciousness isn't just your thinking mind. It includes vast unconscious territories that operate according to their own logic and agenda. Jung defined individuation as the central process of human development, becoming who you actually are by integrating all aspects of your psyche. This isn't about becoming perfect or eliminating negative traits. It's about becoming whole. Here's how it works. Throughout life, we encounter experiences that trigger unconscious material. A criticism activates deep shame. Success triggers fear of failure. Love brings up abandonment wounds. These aren't random occurrences. They're part of what alchemists called the great work. Individuation happens through encountering what Jung called the shadow, those aspects of ourselves we've rejected or refused to acknowledge. These rejected parts don't disappear. They remain active in the unconscious. Influencing our behavior, they create internal conflicts that manifest as external resistance to our conscious goals. The shadow consists of parts of ourselves we've hidden or denied. Our anger, selfishness, vulnerability, or any qualities we've been taught are unacceptable. The key insight is that you don't need to eliminate or fix these aspects. You need to integrate them, acknowledge their existence, and understand their purpose in your psychological makeup. When shadow material remains unconscious and rejected, it sabotages your conscious efforts from behind the scenes. What's crucial to understand is that this process is always happening whether you're conscious of it or not. Life constantly presents curriculum for psychological integration. You can either cooperate with this natural development or resist it. Resistance creates suffering. Cooperation creates transformation and, as a byproduct, the ability to manifest more effectively. Both ancient wisdom traditions and quantum field research point to something that challenges individualism. Consciousness operates within larger organizing intelligence systems. Esoteric schools called this spiritual hierarchy. Modern consciousness researchers describe non-local intelligence fields. Here's what this means practically. Your individual consciousness isn't separate from universal consciousness. It's more like a wave in an ocean. The wave has apparent independence, but operates according to oceanic principles. This creates what appears as limitation, but is actually guidance. When manifestation attempts fail or meet resistance, it often signals misalignment between ego desires and deeper evolutionary curriculum. What you think you want may conflict with what your larger self is trying to develop through experience. Traditional cultures understood this. They made decisions by considering not just personal desires, but community welfare, ancestral wisdom, and spiritual guidance. This wasn't primitive thinking. It was sophisticated understanding of how consciousness actually operates within interconnected systems. The practical implication is profound. Instead of forcing personal will against apparent obstacles, you learn to sense the deeper intelligence moving through your life situation. This doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming collaborative with forces larger than the individual ego. Buddhist and Taoist traditions discovered something counterintuitive about reality creation. Only through releasing attachment to outcomes does manifestation become effortless. This sounds contradictory until you understand the mechanics involved. Attachment creates energetic contraction. When you desperately need something to happen, that desperation broadcasts lack and resistance. The universe responds to your energetic state, not your mental desires. If you're emanating scarcity consciousness while affirming abundance, scarcity wins. Release doesn't mean not caring about outcomes. It means caring deeply while holding outcomes lightly. This creates what ancient traditions called divine detachment, clear intention without desperate grasping. You see this principle everywhere once you cognize it. Athletes perform best when they stop trying to force perfect performance and enter flow states. Artists create masterpieces when they stop worrying about success and focus on authentic expression. Entrepreneurs build successful businesses when they stop being desperate for money and start solving genuine problems. The paradox resolves when you understand that you are not separate from what you're trying to create. Consciousness and cosmos are one field appearing as many. When you align with this fundamental unity, creation becomes natural expression rather than forced manipulation. How do you actually work with these principles? Ancient traditions developed specific practices that modern psychology has validated. The key is systematic integration of unconscious content through what alchemists called laboratory work. This involves several components. Shadow work, identifying and integrating rejected aspects of personality through dream work, active imagination, and honest self-examination. Energy practices like meditation, breath work, and body work that develop awareness of subtle states and clear energetic blockages. Developing discernment between ego desires and deeper, authentic impulses through contemplative practices. The process isn't comfortable. Facing unconscious material means confronting fears, wounds, and aspects of yourself you've rejected. But this discomfort is purposeful. It's the solve phase that precedes the coagulate phase of creating new reality. What emerges through this integration is genuine creative power, not the ability to manipulate circumstances through force, but the capacity to align with natural creative principles that operate through all life. When consciousness becomes coherent, when unconscious and conscious aspects work together rather than against each other, reality responds with remarkable cooperation. The practical result is what mystics called effortless action. Goals manifest through synchronicity, opportunity, and natural unfolding rather than struggle and force. What this investigation reveals is that the consciousness paradox resolves through understanding a fundamental principle. You cannot create what you are not willing to become. Reality creation isn't about manipulating external circumstances. It's about transforming the consciousness that perceives and interacts with those circumstances. Ancient alchemists knew this. They understood that the great work wasn't about turning lead into gold. It was about transforming base consciousness into refined awareness. The external gold was merely a byproduct of internal transformation. Quantum physics confirms this ancient wisdom. The observer and observed are intimately connected. Change the observer and you change what's observed. But changing the observer requires facing everything you've been avoiding about yourself. This is why most manifestation attempts fail. People want external change without internal transformation. But consciousness doesn't work that way. It operates according to principles of wholeness, integration, and authentic expression. The invitation isn't to abandon desires, but to examine the consciousness that generates them. Are they arising from wounded ego patterns seeking validation? Or from authentic creative impulses aligned with your deeper nature? What has your experience revealed about the relationship between internal transformation and external manifestation? Share your insights in the comments as we continue exploring how ancient operations apply to modern consciousness development. Subscribe to One Paradox Collective for investigations into practical spirituality, consciousness development, and the integration of wisdom traditions. We do not promise quick fixes for complex spiritual development. We promise better questions about extraordinary creative potential.